We have been waiting for what feels like an eternity, many long months that seem to stretch endlessly with nothing but anticipation and hope. But finally, the moment is upon us. And after all the waiting, all the buildup, all the questions, all the speculation, all the hours of looking at schedules, rosters, off-season news, and imagining what this season could be, here we are, just about 28 hours away from kickoff to the Seattle Seahawks season, a season that doesn't just open with any game, but with a clash that already feels like it could shape the trajectory of the year. Because it's not just football, it's not just a home opener, it's a rivalry game against the San Francisco 49ers. And when it comes to the Seahawks and 49ers, everybody knows there is no such thing as just another game. This is one of those games that resonates deeper, that carries history, that holds weight. And this time, this season, this matchup, well, it feels a little bit different because for the first time in several years, I can honestly sit here and tell you with conviction that I feel good about this matchup, not cautious optimism, not hoping to just hang in there, but genuinely feeling that Seattle has a very real shot to not just compete, but to win, to set the tone, to start the season on the right foot, to go 1-0 not only in the league standings, but more importantly, in the division. And anyone who has followed this team knows how important that divisional win can be, how it shapes confidence, how it fuels momentum, and how it signals to the rest of the NFC West that this team is here, serious, and ready to run. Now, that being said, let's dig in because there's a lot to pull apart before we can justifiably arrive at that conclusion. And I want to be clear, I'm not saying this just for the sake of saying it, not because I want to manufacture hype, but because when you analyze the factors, when you look at the details, when you peel back the layers, the reasons to feel good are there, and they are tangible. And they start with health, injuries, and one major storyline, Christian McCaffrey. Yesterday, we learned McCaffrey did not practice. And while it may seem like a footnote, it is not, because this isn't a veteran getting a rest day. This isn't load management. This is a player who is clearly not 100%. And when you're the 49ers and your offensive engine relies so heavily on the legs and the versatility of McCaffrey, any crack in that foundation matters, especially when that player has already piled up the miles, already past the stage of his prime, and is still being leaned on as if he's indestructible, which he isn't. So even if he plays, even if he has his moments, you can be fairly certain he is not going to be himself, not going to be the nightmare that he has been at times in years past, and that shifts the calculus. Because for once, it's the Seahawks walking in with relative health and their opponent carrying more questions. And that matters. So when I say I feel good, that's one of the reasons, but it doesn't stop there because to really understand why optimism feels justified, you have to go back and look at why the Seahawks are here with Mike McDonald on the sidelines instead of Pete Carroll, a legend, a man who did more for this franchise than almost anyone else, but whose system, particularly his defense, had grown stale, predictable, and repeatedly picked apart by the very teams that define this division, namely the 49ers and the Rams, who in the Shanahan and McVay eras had solved the Carroll defense like a riddle in a children's book. And that could not continue. And that is why the Seahawks pivoted, because they needed a mind like McDonald's, a defensive architect who thrives on deception, disguise, and adjustment. Because against a Shanahan offense, if what you show pre-snap is what you deliver post-snap, you're dead before the play even begins. And Carroll's defense had reached that fatal level of predictability. So when I look at this matchup, I see not just a test, but almost a referendum on that hire. Because this is the kind of game they brought McDonald here to win. And that makes me excited, because we've already seen glimpses of what his schemes can do. The way they can fluster quarterbacks who need clean reads and quick decisions. The way they can bait you into thinking, you know what's coming, only to pull the rug away. And if there's one thing Brock Purdy has shown, it's that when you can disguise, when you can force him off script, his effectiveness drops dramatically. And that's where this game could tilt. Not by brute strength, but by design, by tactical misdirection. And when you combine that with the state of the 49ers receiving core, you realize how much opportunity sits right there in front of this Seattle defense. Because make no mistake, deep down, the 49ers receivers are depleted, battered, and in disarray, relying on Marquez Valdez-Scantling, who just got there, to be their speed threat because Brandon Ayuk is out, Jacob Cowing is out, Demarcus Robinson is suspended, and Jawan Jennings is suiting up, but essentially coming in cold after missing most of camp. And what does that mean? It means you can put Devin Witherspoon and Tariq Woolen on an island outside and feel confident. It means you can let Nick Emenwari slide into the slot or move Witherspoon inside and play around with matchups. It means you can blitz in disguise without fearing you'll get torched deep. And that matters because it frees up McDonald to be creative, to throw exotic looks, to attack. And that's why I say this defense, in this particular matchup, has the tools to not only survive but thrive. Remember, we're not even factoring in how this run defense, which in years past was bullied by the 49ers outside zone, is now constructed with better personnel for exactly that challenge, with Witherspoon being one of the best tackling corners in the league, with Emenwary built to play near the line, with players like DeMarcus Lawrence able to set edges, with an overall structure designed to keep backs from gashing them wide. And when you layer that on top of McCaffrey's uncertainty, it feels like a recipe for containment, not perfection, but enough to give your offense the platform it needs. And speaking of the offense, let's flip the field, because here too, the matchups lean quietly in Seattle's favor. And while there are nerves about starting two first-time players, Ray Zabel and Jalen Sundle, at left guard and center, let's be honest, if you're going to debut rookies in the interior, you could not handpick a better opponent than the current 49ers defensive interior, which has been gutted of its former stars and left with jaggy placeholders like Kalia Davis and Jordan Elliott, with rookies Alfred Collins and CJ West waiting in the wings. And gone are the days of Buckner, Armstead, and Hargrave haunting that middle, which means this is not just a survivable matchup, it's a winnable one. The kind that can give young players confidence and allow the offense to establish the run. Because make no mistake, that is the formula here, with Kubiak's scheme built on running the ball inside, outside, gap, zone, whatever the call. And if you cannot do it against this particular 49ers front, it will be very difficult to do it against the likes of Pittsburgh's Cam Hayward next week or Tampa's Vita Vea later in the season. So this is the test you want, and this is the test you should pass. Now, of course, there's Nick Bosa, still a terror, still capable of wrecking plays single-handedly, but that's one man, and you can double him, you can chip him, you can make him earn every inch. And beyond him, the edge rush is thin, raw, or injured. With Gross Matos dinged up, Meikle Williams still too raw, Bryce Huff serviceable but not terrifying. So the threat is concentrated, not overwhelming. And that matters because if you neutralize Bosa, suddenly this defense looks very mortal. And then you turn to their secondary, which again is a shadow of its former self. With Shavarius Ward, the only true standout, with Diamador Lenier being pushed outside from the slot, with questions everywhere else, and when you line that up against Seattle's receiving options, against the chemistry Geno Smith has built, you realize that while this won't be an air raid offense, it doesn't need to be. It just needs to be opportunistic, balanced, efficient, and that is doable against this group because there's no Legion of Boom in that secondary anymore. There's just a patchwork unit vulnerable to well-timed strikes.